welcome to the premiere episode of Local Rigs. I'm Charlie V. We are at River City Studios in Grand Rapids, Michigan with Michael Miller from the Rhythm Aces.
Hey, how's it going?
Michael has brought a bunch of cool stuff today, and we're going to dive right in and talk about his main rig.
Yeah, hey, this is Michael Miller. I'm here at Local Rigs to show you some of the stuff that I've accumulated over time, all the stuff I've played with. I've been in probably about 6-7 local bands. Right now in the Rhythm Aces, this is a 2008 Dot in the blonde, of course. One of the things I like about this guitar is that it has a really, really thick neck to it. I've got pretty small hands, but I still like the feel of a thick neck under there. I string it up with D'Addario 10s. It's got a pair of Guitar Fetish Dream 90s on it, and I've got an old Bigsby that I actually took off of an Epiphone Swingster. I didn't like it on the Swingster, but I wanted to put a Bigsby on this because I use Bigsbys all the time. Of course, it's hooked into my Egnater Tweaker amp. This is a pretty nice unit. It's basically two 6V6s and three 12AX7s. I use the JJ 6V6s. I like those because they're a real stout, almost gives it a deluxe kind of sound, but it doesn't break up too bad. If I start into a tuner, the old Boss tuner, this tuner has been, as you can see, it's so beat, it has been with me forever. This is a Tech 21 double drive. What I like about it is it's got a real long ramp up of the drive. Of course, the next thing I have is the good old Ibanez Tube Screamer. You can't lose with one of these. Probably the most valuable piece here on the floor is I've got that Boss delay there. This is from the 80s. This is from that original Bucket Brigade stuff. I've had this for a long time. It got stolen once and I ended up getting it back again, which I was pretty lucky on that. For delay, this is the sound I hear in my head. If it doesn't sound like this, that's the sound that I actually hear in my head. I just use a little bit of slap. A little bit of slap. I want to just add a little bit of presence to the guitar. On the end, of course, the Boss tremolo, which is pretty generic tremolo, but it's a really, really good solid tremolo. Not too fiddly. It's hard to get a bad sound out of that Boss tremolo. My hunt has always been for that one spot where an amp is just starting to get a little dirty and it's just getting some of that harmonic content that you get, but it still is pretty clean. If I kind of back off on my picking, it cleans up a little bit, and this amp gives me this in spades. So this is a Gretsch Electromatic. I bought this, wow. I always wanted myself a Gretsch, but could never really afford that big price tag. These came out, and it was pretty, I could afford that. I ended up at the Guitar Center, nobody else had them. I walked in the door and they had probably the first one that they had gotten. So of course I had to look at that, I had to pick it down, started playing it. Fell in love. This is a really, really solid guitar. It's very, very feedback resistant. I've played this on many loud stages and you almost have to battle to get the thing to feedback. It's got some very, very large trestle bracing down the middle in there. I have modified it with many, many pickups. The original pickups were a little bit too humbucker-like. My ears like the sound of single coil pickups. So I put these GFS humbuckers in it that I had. You know, and that wasn't quite right. So then I had this brilliant idea. I was going to cut a coil out of each of them and only have one coil working in each pickup. And that was it. That was the ticket on that. It made that single coil sound, sort of sounded a little bit like a Gretsch Dynasonic, which is pretty much the same thing. I've played this guitar on a million gigs with Chupacabras, with Truck Stop Cobras. I've played it with Rhythm Aces. I've brought it as a backup for a bunch of gigs. One of the interesting things about it is that I developed this really bad habit with this guitar. I figured it was such a tough guitar, and when you got the amp and the delay and everything just right, just feeling really, really good, you could hit the guitar and you would get this beautiful sound that would come chiming through. Well, yeah, I did that for years, and I had a lot of people tell me, don't hit the guitar. Well, eventually I did crack it. It's got a crack in it now. Kind of a battle scar. I had my buddy Mark Swanson put a patch on that on the back on the inside, and it's as good as new. And I still like hitting this guitar. Let me go home, whiskey. Well, let me walk out that door. Let me go home, whiskey. Well, let me walk out that door. I got orders from my baby not to come home drunk anymore. Hey, this is my new baby. This is a Guild Capri. It was meant to be kind of Guild's version of the Gibson ES 175, but they changed a few things on it to make it more interesting. The interesting thing about this guitar ends up being the pickups. These are mini humbuckers, but they're a low-powered mini humbucker using, I think it's an Alnico 4 magnet in it. I'd have to read that again. And they did it interesting because the bridge pickup is using a 41 gauge wire, and then the neck pickup is using a 42 gauge wire. And what it does is it makes the neck pickup sound a little hotter, but also fatter. But the relative volume of the two pickups, they work pretty good. It was said at some point that I think it was D'Angelico preferred this pickup for his guitars. It's a beautiful guitar. This guitar is also made in the Cort factory that the Gretsch was made in. I don't know if I mentioned that. It does not have as heavy a bracing, so I do have to watch a little bit of the feedback on it. It seems to work pretty good at loud volumes, but I'm actually hoping that I'm going to be able to get a little bit of cool feedback out of this guitar. And it is beautiful. One of the reasons I went to this guitar is I wanted something that looked a little more vintage. I'm playing a lot of jump blues these days, and I wanted something that looked more 40s and 50s. Yeah, I know, no Bigsby's in the 40s and 50s, but I wanted that guitar. I wanted a sunburst. I wanted more classic shape. This is a 1996 American Standard Stratocaster custom color. Something they did during the 90s was they would do a custom color. They'd do 2 a year, and they would paint the headstock the same color. That was how you always knew that it was a custom color. Interestingly enough, with this guitar, this is a 96. It's generally thought of being as one of the bad ones. If you really look at Fender production of Stratocasters, but on the other hand, I've never played a Strat that I thought sounded as good as this one, as full and as alive. It is one of the 90s ones, so the wood is probably alder, mystery wood. It's got a full swimming pool route, they call that, so they just did a hole in here so they could throw humbuckers or anything in here. It is shielded. They did a pretty good job on that. And then one of the things you can tell with this, these are the stock pickups, American Standard pickups, flat pole pieces. At this point, they were doing flat pole pieces. Later on, they went over to the standard, the staggered style pole pieces. It has this beautiful American Standard tremolo on it. One of the things that I've always loved about this is I could do a full set with some pretty big whammy bar stuff going on, and this bad boy would stay in tune. A very, very stable guitar. I've always found that in different weather and stuff, the neck wouldn't shift around very much on that. Yeah, I may go sometimes for years not playing this, and then I pick it up, and it's an old friend, the Smoking Devil. This is a Fender Reverb box. This is the secret to making surf instrumentals. This is what you gotta have. Into a Fender amp, it just is surf. So this is a reissue, probably 99, right in there, reissue of the Fender Reverb box. It is a tube reverb box. It's a 3-knobber. You can get so much reverb out of this, you sound like you're falling into a well. I run that into a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe. This is two 6L6s, about 40 watts. You can get a very, very clean, very, very loud sound out of this. On this unit, I use a stock speaker, JJ 6L6s. Again, I like that brand, JJ. They seem to make a really, really good product. Typically, I'll run some kind of a boost into this just so that I get a little bit of grit out of it, so it's not hauntingly clean. I know a lot of the surf purists, they're actually going to want very, very, very clean. I've still got a little bit too much Link Ray in me. I got to have a little bit of grit in my sound. I just sort of like that. But yeah, this is a pretty standard setup. The really nice thing about that is I've never heard of a reverb that sounds better for surf than one of these Fender Reverb boxes.
So that wraps up the first episode of Local Rigs. We want to thank River City Studios for having us. I also want to thank Michael Miller for showing us all of his cool stuff. And we will be back with more episodes. So if you like what you see, give us a like, subscribe, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.